Copyright disclaimer: under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. No copyright infringement intended. All rights belong to their respective owners.
This is War Cry. We're on the wall crying out for our children, our communities, our schools, our churches, our families. This is War Cry. Welcome to our reality. Gun violence, Chicago, Philly, Detroit, New York, Atlanta, just to name a few. Our black children are dying day by day. This is War Cry. Police brutality. Hands up! Don't move. I can't breathe. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag All Lives Matter to Christ. This is War Cry. Drugs, rape, mass shootings, school violence. This is War Cry. Galvanizing people to pray for our children and to take action. Let's march on Washington. We want prayer back in school. This is War Cry. Cameras, memorials in every corner in our neighborhood. Who died this weekend? Oh no, not Miss Martha's grandson. This is War Cry. He was only 16. His brother died last year. He was only 13. This is War Cry. We the people. We're the elected officials. This is War Cry. We need the church. Where's the church? Only on Sundays. Get to the streets, church. We need you out there. This is War Cry. Girl, be gone. Boy, be gone. Mothers crying. Fathers being locked up. Welcome to our reality. Identity crisis. This is War Cry. Oh, they're trying to remove our history off the textbook. Oh, critical race theory? It makes them feel bad. It's our reality. Fake reality shows. We want the real truth. Stay woke. This is War Cry. HBCUs under attack. This is War Cry. Equal pay for what we do. We want a reparation. This is War Cry. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Wait a minute. Is that somebody else they're burying that looks like us? Only 12. This is War Cry. Oh, let us come together and pray for our young people, pray for our communities, pray for our schools, pray for our churches, pray that the government gives us what we need, a fair opportunity. This is War Cry, home of the brave, land of the free. Who's free? Our men are locked up. This is War Cry. Hashtag mothers against gang violence. Hashtag fathers who love their sons. Hashtag what would Jesus do? This is War Cry.
I know who goes before me. I know who stays behind. The God of Israel's army is always by my side.
This is War Cry, and welcome family into another episode of War Cry. We appreciate you joining us, family. Hit someone up. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know that you appreciate us going into the deep of discussing the things that affect us as a people. This is War Cry. This is War Cry. Do you love your community? Do you love your children? Do you love your church? Do you love your government? Do you love your family? It's time for us to speak up against the injustices that we see. We've got to hold our elected officials responsible for the violence and the drugs in our neighborhoods. Have you lived in a neighborhood where the street lights are broken and they need to be repaired? Do you live in a neighborhood where the senior citizens feel safe? Do you live in a neighborhood or do you live in a hood? This is War Cry. Subscribe to us. Hit us up on our Gmail, warcry.children@gmail.com. Submit the names of children over so we can pray for them. Go in front of your schools and pray for them. Be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Listen, doesn't get you anywhere. This is War Cry. This is War Cry. Come on, let's bring the host in. Oh, we're not Oprah. We're not the 2020. We're not the Housewives of LA, but we are the voice of the people. This is War Cry. And we're glad that you decided to join us today. I am very excited about this show, broadcast War Cry today, because I got two people on here that are just as radical as I am. Now, you know that I am radical. I love my people. I fight for my people. And I fight for any injustices that I see among poor and oppressed people, people who've been marginalized, people who don't have a voice. Yeah, the haves versus the have-nots. When is somebody going to reach in and help pull some of us up? This is War Cry. This is War Cry. We're not politically corrected, but we're Christ directed. This is War Cry. And we're so excited today. We're going to do a video. Please, engineer, please put our first video on before I introduce our first guest. The first video. And I am excited.
I'm State Representative Bruce Antone. And as a state representative, I am the people's representative in Tallahassee. So not only do I represent the 180,000 folks that live in the district I represent, but I represent everybody across the state of Florida. So you have to get involved. You have to call your elected officials, whether it's a city council person, county commission, state representative, state senator, U.S. congresswoman, U.S. senator, and you have to communicate what are the issues that are negatively impacting your community. Okay, is there too much crime? Is there too much traffic? Or is trash not being picked up? Are there too many planes flying too low over your community? Is there too much trash on the street? You have to get involved so that you can make sure that your community is not left behind. We are the change that we've been waiting for.
Yes, I want to introduce you to Florida State Representative Bruce Antone. Representative Antone, please come on and tell us something about yourself. I just wanted basically to do the introductory video. He was on, the connection may not be good. Okay, then let's go to the next video. Sometimes his connection could have been cut off or he may have been called away. Let's go to the next video. This video is about the Rosa Parks Musuem in Montgomery, Alabama. And we have the director, which is Miss McKenzie. She's here. So while we get the video together.
Tomorrow marks the 111th birthday of one of the civil rights movement's most influential figures, Rosa Parks. WSFA 12 News reporter Simon Schusler shows us how she was honored today at her museum here in Montgomery.
A lifetime of courage and activism. Troy University's Rosa Parks Museum honoring Parks' legacy for what would have been her 111th birthday.
You know, we're proud to carry on that life of activism and her legacy for future generations, but it really just kicked off the modern civil rights movement that started right here in Montgomery.
Parks' niece, Sheila Macaulay Keys, helped present the program The Color of Courage is Purple. Other activities included making birthday cards, live music, and a story time with the book I Am Rosa Parks.
I am very excited to share with the children as this book will share information about her life, because we mostly know her as an adult, but she was a little girl born in Tuskegee, Alabama.
Now, it was on a bus like this one right here almost 70 years ago, and on this very street that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, but her legacy and influence is deeper than that one act. After the bus boycott, Parks left Alabama, but she continued fighting for issues such as fair housing policies and freedom for political prisoners. She also started her own scholarship foundation, which awarded more than $3 million in college scholarships since 1980.
So that legacy continues to encourage our youth to take a stand against injustice and to live for what is right. Because as she said, it's always right to do what is right.
A motto that lives on, inspiring the next generation on her 111th birthday. Simon Schuessler, WSFA 12 News.
Simon, thanks.
Miss McKenzie, come in, unmute, and introduce yourself and what you do at the museum, and then we'll go back to the state senator. Welcome to War Cry.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Like she said, my name is McKenzie Walker. I am actually the Education Coordinator and Curator for the Rosa Parks Museum. The person that you saw in the video was the Director of Operations, Donna Beisel. She is unfortunately tied up today, but she asked me to step in her absence. And she wants to say thank you for this wonderful opportunity to come and speak about the Rosa Parks Museum and what we do.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about the museum, and why do you think it's critical for you to be there at this time?
So I was born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. So I always grew up around history. My mom is a historian, and she's the director of the Freedom Rides Museum in Montgomery as well. So all my life, I've been surrounded by Black history. And the museum was open on December 1st, 2000. And that was the anniversary of when she was arrested in December 1955. So reason we are open is to basically preserve the life and legacy of Rosa Parks, but not just Rosa Parks, everyone who was involved in the Montgomery Bus Boycott at the time. We also talk about Claudette Colvin and all those other people that were arrested prior to her. And we also talk about the future, as well as what we want students to take away from the museum. We want them to be encouraged to go out into their own communities and make the similar change that Rosa made. So we really try to continue that life and legacy of hers and continue the mission of always doing what is right.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up about Freedom Rides. What is Freedom Rides?
So I'm glad you asked. So a lot of people are not really familiar with it. They might be familiar with the name John Lewis. He was a freedom rider from Nashville, Tennessee. And the Freedom Riders were basically trying to get integration on national buses. So Trailways, Greyhound. So while the Montgomery Bus Boycott was more about city buses, they're trying to get international buses from, integrated from Trailways and Greyhound. So they took a trip from starting in Washington, D.C. and going throughout the South. So they went through the Carolinas, Georgia. They ended up going and stopping in Birmingham and Anniston and were attacked in 1961, and they were also attacked in Montgomery, where that is the place, the Freedom Rides Museum is the place where they got attacked on May 18th in 1961. John Lewis, Bernard Lafayette, they were all attacked at the Greyhound bus station here. So that's something that a lot of people are not familiar with, but a lot of people might get it confused with what we do here as far as the Montgomery Bus Boycott and the Freedom Rides. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
Okay, do we have a Florida State Representative? He just texted me. He said that he cannot turn on his mic, but Florida State Representative Bruce Antone, he is responsible for introducing a bill to build a $50 million museum in Orlando, Florida. Also, he introduced a bill. He has half of the highway, a leading highway in Florida, named after the Tuskegee Airmen, and he's also has the fourth Thursday in the month of March is Tuskegee Airmen Freedom Day. He's having difficulties coming on. We're trying to work that out in the background. But as we proceed on with the show, we do have Bishop Edward Lee Johnson on, and we have Reverend Patton on. So I want you guys to introduce yourself.
Well, I'll defer to Ms. Patton first. Go ahead. Ms. Patton, your mic is muted. There
okay. All right. Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Had a little problem getting it on, but God be the glory. I'm here. Just to show you that I've been an educator for many, many years, and I had written my dissertation on the African American for the New York State Algebra Common One Regents examination, where we examine how our children were responding to the Algebra 1 Common Core Regents examination. The findings were not surprising, but it's been very difficult. And that finding that we have found during that time is that our children was not producing because the level of how they were introducing the algebra had changed, and the children were not able to grasp it. So that has been like an ongoing conversation in the educational community. And then with COVID hit, and the children were not properly educated, which has always been my situation that I have been always concerned about, because when the children are not properly educated, they cannot properly succeed. And that has to do with everything, not only education, Rosa Parks Museum, the Black History Museum, all these things encompass our children and open their minds for them to be educated, for them to understand not what they need to do academically, but who they were in the world and who they are in America.
Okay, Dr. Johnson.
Good morning. I'm Edward Johnson. I'm a pastor. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm an author. I'm an activist. I currently work in a historic town here in the greater Charleston, South Carolina area that was founded literally 2 years after the Civil War by freedmen who left the city of Charleston and traveled about 20 miles north on the South Carolina Railroad and purchased about 500 acres of land and established this little town. It's currently called Lincolnville because they named it after Lincoln, because he was instrumental in helping to free the slaves through the Emancipation Proclamation. And I didn't know when I came here 40 years ago that the Holy Spirit was preparing me to do the kind of activism that I'm currently doing, but I'm writing my 27th book as we speak. I just released one of my latest books, is titled The Autopsy of Slavery and the Bible. And I was the first author that did a scholarly presentation here in Charleston. For those of you who may not know, we just opened a $100 million International African American Museum here back in June of last year. And I did a presentation there in October from my book. And in this book, I'm addressing much of the information that was purposely left out of the history books as it relates to the history of the country overall, and particularly the history of slavery. As a nation who claim to have been founded on Christian principles, we have never lived out the gospel of Jesus Christ in this country as a nation. And because we've had so much of a struggle with the racial divide that was centered around chattel slavery, that is what is today creating the biggest problem for the country, because there's no way we can move forward on the information that we've learned historically. And so I addressed that in the book. And just briefly, in the book, chapter 1, I talk about slavery in the Old Testament and slavery in the New Testament. And chapter 3, I talk about the trauma that's still on the culture today, both black and white. We often think of black people being traumatized by slavery, and they are, but white folks are equally traumatized. They just have a different type of trauma. And all of this inhibits our ability to relate to each other properly. And then in chapter 3, I talk about chapter 4, I talk about chattel slavery. Now, chattel slavery does not exist in the Bible, period. But I can tell you 90% of all of the scholars in America, maybe 98 to 99%, they never distinguish the difference in their writings. In fact, you can have a PhD and still do not understand this information. And you might say, well, Johnson, what makes you so different? I'm a prophet. I'm not a scholar. The Holy Spirit took me on a journey a half century ago to teach me this information. And I don't want to overtalk my time here, but I'm trying to set it up here.
But no,
go ahead.
No, it's important. And that's probably one of the reasons why Representative Bruce Antone can't come on, because it's important that he connect with you and he can connect with you, McKenzie. He's trying to bring a museum, a Black museum, into Florida. And it's one already been brought in last year with you, Bishop Johnson. So it's important that I give you his information and you guys connect, because in that museum, Dr. Johnson, you need to have your book.
Yes.
McKenzie, in your travels, in the museums where you are, Dr. Johnson's book needs to be incorporated. And you may be saying, why? Because guess what? All of the freedom riders, all of the civil rights people who fought for us, all of the Dr. Kings, all of the Rosa Parks, all had a religious background. It was God that propelled them to get to that point. So now we've got to bring that history together. And I believe, and we're going to talk about it, that one of the reasons that there has been such a push to move our history away and to dissipate it is because we have not included religion in our history.
Absolutely.
We've included the violence. We've included all of the wrongdoings, the lynchings, the hangings, the treatment, but we have not incorporated the Bible, our history of who we are as a people. But that's just a comment on the side. Getting back to you,
yes,
McKenzie, because I am going to connect you. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Johnson. You want to come in?
I wanted to mention the fact that you said that, which is perfect, because what most Black people in this country do not know is who those people were that came over here on those slave ships. That information was stripped from us. We don't know our history. You ask the average Black person in America where they're from, they're going to say Africa. Africa has 54 countries. We don't have a clue where we came from because this information was taken away from us and we don't know it. They don't teach it in college. And as you said about the spiritual side of it, we don't know our spiritual history.
We don't know the spiritual side.
Yeah, we bring a whole lot of other stuff here, in our culture, but we don't know who we are. I tell you who we are in this book right here.
So I am going to connect you, McKenzie, and you, Dr. Johnson, because the enemy is not going to get the victory. We've got to be connected. You can give him some help, McKenzie, in Florida for this museum. Dr. Johnson, you can work with him. So it's going to get done. It's going to get done because that's what War Cry is all about. It's connecting people, learning our history, and moving to another level in our being. So, McKenzie, I want to get back to you. I was so elated. First of all, when I thought about Rosa Parks, I thought about Detroit. And I was a little confused because I said she has a museum in Detroit. I thought a museum was in Montgomery, Alabama. So just help me understand that better, McKenzie.
Yeah, so the bus that she rode on that day that she was arrested, it's currently in the Ford Museum in Detroit. I think a lot of people, when they come here, we have a exhibit in our museum that shows the virtual reenactment of the day she was arrested, and it's a bus similar to it. And a lot of people ask, "Is that the bus?" And we say no. It's very, very similar. If you look at it and look at the bus that she was arrested on back in that time, they're very similar, but it's not the exact bus. So a lot of people will go to Detroit and see the Ford Museum as well as where she resided before she passed. There is some information in the city of Detroit about her. But as far as a museum, we're pretty much the only museum that really kind of highlights her as an individual. There are other museums that highlight her here and there, but we really talk about the beginning of her life until the end of her life. And then also in Detroit, her family still currently resides, as you heard a little bit about her niece Sheila. They try to go around the country, not just in Detroit, but around the country, and talk about her aunt. And she wrote a book. It's called My Auntie Rosa. And it basically, she got all of her Rosa Parks would ask each of her nieces and nephews a question, or they would ask her a question, and she would go back into that time period and talk about her experiences, whether it was with their dad, Sylvester, or whether it was with her grandfather, whether it was with her mother. So there's a lot of information that I think a lot of people don't know as far as Rosa Parks besides the arrest. And she was really involved in the community. I mean, she started the youth chapter of the NAACP in Montgomery because she saw that there was a need for these young people to get involved after Claudette Colvin's arrest. And Claudette Colvin was actually in her NAACP youth group. So she saw that there was a need. She saw the power in the voice of the youth. And so she, wanted to use that. And even after she lost her job, she was still, very involved in the community, very involved in NAACP. And a lot of people will ask, well, was it planted? Was she planned? And the answer is no. Simply because it was December. She had worked a long day at work and she was just tired and she didn't want to move. I mean, I can think of a time where, I've been so tired that I didn't want to get up and move. I was just so tired. So it was one of those situations where I think a lot of people kind of thought that all this was planned, but she was just really just tired of being tired. So I think that's something that people really need to understand when talking about Rosa Parks.
Now, McKenzie, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, I'm tired. I'm tired of the injustice that our people are going through. I'm tired of people trying to tear our history down, trying to hide our history. I'm tired of the blood violence. I'm tired of the gang violence. I'm tired of the human trafficking. I'm tired of we not knowing our history. I did a survey and I thank God, Representative Bruce, you're on, because I prayed you on. I said that I was going to make the connection because I got Dr. Johnson here, I got McKenzie here, and guess what? You need to know them. You're trying to push for a museum, and now I'm going to give the mic over to you. Tell us something about yourself and what you're trying to do. You're mute. I'm mute. Still can't hear you, brother.
He got a microphone issue. He unmuted himself, but there's a connection problem somewhere with your microphone.
Yes, you have a connection problem. If you can hear me, Dr. Johnson said that you have a connection problem. You may have to do it. Yes, plug that up because we're going to get people connected. That's going to happen because I have on my Juneteenth shirt. It's a little radical. I'm a little bit before Juneteenth, but I want to let you know who we are and what we stand for. This is War Cry. This is an urban radio station, and this is speaking up against those people who don't have a voice, and also it's connecting people together for change. So I see the House Representative. He went off again. He's still having technical trouble. I'm going back to you, McKenzie. How many people go through the Rosa Parks Museum, and how is it publicized? Is it on the Chamber of Commerce website? So when visitors come into the state or to the city of Montgomery, that everybody knows is there. Tell us a little something about it and what's in there.
Yeah, so we are not only on the Chamber of Commerce website, we're on pretty much any tourism site that you think of that's in Alabama, because a lot of civil rights history happened in Alabama. So they really wanted to take the time to make sure that everybody has a chance to see it, even if it's not on Experience Montgomery, which we're on, or Birmingham, Tuskegee, all these surrounding areas, we're still on their list as far as the museum. As far as attendance goes, really, we're looking at between, 15 to 16,000 people a year. We have a lot of groups, especially in February and March, because, of course, Black History Month and Women's History Month. And then also in May with those schools getting those last minute field trips in. The summer is kind of a little bit slower. We do have some family reunions come down, but we do have our Juneteenth festival that happens on the Saturday before Juneteenth. And so a lot of people do come down and celebrate in that. So, and then it kind of picks back up in September, October, December with football season with Alabama State University, a lot of their people that are traveling to come down to the games, they want something to do and specifically to get as much Black history as they can while they're here. So they would tend to come to our museum, Freedom Rides, the Legacy Museum. So we're on a different couple of people's radar. And not only do we want to promote our museum, we promote all the museums in Montgomery and also in the surrounding areas. We talk about the Selma and Lowndes Interpreter Center, which discusses the Selma to Montgomery March, as well as the Tuskegee Airmen Field, the Oaks, which was Booker T. Washington's house, Tuskegee University. We definitely want to make sure that we're keeping those surrounding cities as partners. That way, we can still be connected, as you said. And even if we have big or little events, we definitely want them to get exposure as much as possible.
Okay, Reverend Patton, do you have any question you may want to ask Lindsay right now before she goes on?
Yes, I just wanted to say to Mr. Johnson, I have read your book.
Well,
I have read your book.
So
I have it all highlighted. I have it all.
How did you hear about it?
From Elder Montgomery.
Okay.
We were on
on War Cry. On War Cry.
And she talked about the book.
Okay.
I ordered the book. I read the book. So I want you to know that I've read your book. I've highlighted it. I've gone back. I've made references. It was a breath of fresh air to hear another perspective, a holy perspective on what was going on in our history.
Yes.
Well, it was
okay.
So I wanted you to know I read the book.
Thank you so much.
So that's your 5-minute plug. For everybody listening, we want you to go on Amazon, including you, McKenzie. We are going. I am his spokesperson for the Northeastern District. As if we can sell 2 million books, I get a 10%. So let's go, War Cry, and it goes to helping the urban community. It goes to scholarships for our children. That's what it goes to. Not one of our funds go in our pocket. It goes to pick up and spread the news of War Cry. Now, he can never, the book is, even though it's at a minimum cost, you can never he can never pay you for the research he put in there. But that's enough plug for you. Do you have a question for McKenzie? You have a question for McKenzie?
Yes. I just wanted to say that the information, I sort of have a comment and a question. The information that you have given has been so valuable to make the people, when we go on tour and stuff, to see what is going on in our history. The question that I had, and maybe you had answered the question that I had was about Rosa Parks herself. Did she do any particular writing for, like a memoir? Did she do a memoir herself? Now, I know her family was involved, but did she actually do a memoir of her experience?
So Quiet Storm is one of her memoirs. It was an autobiography. Okay. And even though she wrote it, but she was kind of telling the person the information they wrote it. I don't believe it's published anymore. We don't sell it, but I don't believe it's published anymore. Okay. That's the closest as far as any type of writing that she's done. She didn't really do any journaling, really. She had a really good memory. Yeah. So all of the things as far as books and research that people have done, it's pretty much her just telling her story and telling it over and over again without missing a beat. And that's the same thing with a lot of the elders. They have good memories as far as what they've been through, what they've experienced. Same thing with Fred Gray. He's written a couple of memoirs and he goes on to speak. I believe he's 92 or 93, and he's still as sharp as he was back then. So a lot of these people, they're really going off of telling other people their stories. And so she didn't really do much journaling because she just always was telling her story, whether it was around the country, around the world. So a lot of people really wrote it for her, but she kind of told her story, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we call it oral transition.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And that's how the Jews story is over and over again, because they repeat it to their generations and generations. We have the state representative on, but he's still saying that his voice, his mic is not working. Can you hear us now, state representative, or are you still having difficulties? You still having difficulty? Well, I'm going to give you the phone numbers you need anyway. Just listen. We're going to have it fixed and you're going to be back on because you are just as radical as we are. This is War Cry. We want you to subscribe. We want you to share. You know what? You're not going to find another station like this, another podcast, because guess what? We're for the people, by the people, and we stand with the people. This is War Cry. Now, do you have any questions that you might want to ask State Representative Dr. Johnson? Not State Representative, I mean McKenzie, Dr. Johnson?
I was very, sorry.
Not in particular. I'm very familiar with Rosa Parks, but I haven't done a lot of deep diving into just her life per se. But I'm happy to hear that, she's being on display, because this history must get out. I did hear some time ago that they were saying that it wasn't Rosa Parks who was actually having the issue on the bus, that she was planted there because she was already actively involved in the civil rights movement. So, you hear a lot of stuff, but it's really, to me, it's irrelevant because it didn't change the fact that Black people was going through the kind of horrific issue they were going through, driven by white Christians, by the way. I know. And that's really the issue. So thank you.
Now, please mute your phone if you're not speaking. Now, I have Representative Bruce on there. You can hear, right? You can hear. Okay, great. You can hear. I want Dr. Johnson to tell you about the Black History Museum that's in, I think it's Charlotte. Is that where you're from?
No,
Dr. Johnson is
Charleston.
Charleston. I'm sorry. How can I forget from Charleston? Because I know you're instrumental in bringing a museum too. So tell us about the $100 million museum there that you spoke at, Dr. Johnson.
Yes, it's an international African American museum. It's probably about half of the size of the museum that's in Washington, D.C. I've been to both. So this one was a $100 million project. The one in Washington is about $500 million. But they are displaying the fact that 40 to 50% of all of the slaves who came to the shores of America came through Charleston, South Carolina. In fact, they put that museum right at the same port area where they disembarked the ship and got on. So they did a beautiful job there. And the museum opened up in July of last year. And I had several pre-trips into the museum prior to it opening. And we're talking about the Bible, and of course, about my book. The first thing I was looking for when I got in the museum, I was looking for a Bible. The one in Charleston, the one in DC has several, but this one at that point did not have a Bible in it, and it speaks to just how much we are not aware of who we were. Those people that came across on those slave ships, they wiped that information away from us, and we're still struggling to get it back now. But the museum is an excellent place to get started in trying to learn some of the history. But until we understand the biblical side of this, it's never going to really make total sense to us what happened. And I give you the full story in this book because I've studied this information for at least 40 years now. And they don't teach you this stuff. They don't teach you this stuff in school. I have a younger brother with a PhD, and he doesn't know this information. I had to teach it to him.
Now, I want to tell you, Representative Bruce, is that we're going to do a three-way call. You're gonna hear the voice of Dr. Johnson and hear the voice of McKenzie, because I want to make sure people are connected together. We know that you're facing some struggles. You're getting some playback from some of your counterparts about even the placement of the Black History Museum in Florida. They want you to put it in the city of St. Augustine, and you want to keep it in Orlando because of the foot travel that go there. So I am going to connect you with these two people. So don't fear. We're going to connect. We're going to connect. We're going to connect. Now, let's go back to you, McKenzie. Why do you think, first of all, where do you get your funding from? And what support do you get from the Black churches, McKenzie?
So we are owned and operated by Troy University. Where we are is Troy University, Montgomery. The main campus is in Troy, Alabama, which is about 40 miles south from Montgomery. So we are a public institution, and a lot of our funding does come from grants as well as private donors. A lot of the grants that we do, they're pretty much, we're trying to get the museum upgraded. It will be 25 years since we open next year. And while we have upgraded the technology, the exhibits need a huge upgrading as far as upgrading the information, updating the information, as well as in making it more sensory friendly and kid friendly in our museum. And what was the second question you asked? I'm sorry.
And why do you feel the need for an institution like this, to the Rosa Parks Museum, to be upgraded? And also, do you feel the pressure on people trying to want to close our history down?
So the old saying goes, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it, or we're doomed to go back into those enslavement days, as far as enslavement in the mind, enslavement in financial crisis, enslavement in all types of aspects. And so I think it's important because, especially for young people like me that want to get involved and to keep it going, because these people that have started, they're either, gone on somewhere, or they're, retiring, and they don't have the energy anymore. They're getting into their 70s and 80s, and it's time for them to pass on the torch. So it's important for people like me that are young, that have the energy, that want to educate the children, that want to educate the people in Alabama, who want to educate the people around the country and around the world, not only about Rosa Parks, but Black history, period. There's a lot of history that goes on even past the Montgomery Bus Boycott. One of the things that we discuss in the museum is that even though on the bus you could sit wherever you wanted, the bus stop was still segregated. So you still had to wait.
Oh, wait, hold it. Let's go to that. When we fought and got the right to sit on the bus,
right,
we could sit anywhere we wanted to sit.
Right.
And I grant you, I think it was still uncomfortable. I think we still felt the pressure of being Black sitting in the front. And sometimes I read a book, and the book said, why do we still go back to the back of the bus? I mean, in New York, our school kids get on the bus, and guess what? They feel more comfortable going to the back of the bus. And we fought to sit in the front of the bus. So I think our mentality is still kind of twisted up a little bit, because we still kind of have that generational trauma where we feel more comfortable sitting back instead of up front. And read that book. It's why do we go to the back of the cafeteria? Why do we go to the back of the bus? Why do we go to the back of the classroom? We don't want to be up front. Now that's critical. Now you said that the bus stops were still segregated. So you mean to tell me if I can get on the bus and sit in the front, I still got to stand over on the left side of the bus stop, and not with people that are different color than me? Is that what you're telling me?
That's exactly right. So you would have to still sit at this colored section of the bus stop. You could sit anywhere you want on the bus, but at that bus stop, it was still segregated. And that's the point that we try to drive home to people, is that, the Montgomery Bus Boycott ending didn't stop the segregation. It just found different ways. So like I said, the bus stop being still segregated, the buses on Greyhound and Trailways, they were still segregated. All this segregation still going on. A lot of people have this notion of the Montgomery Bus Boycott ended segregation, which is not the case. Even now, still some places in Montgomery are still very much in that mindset of segregation. There's still poor Black neighborhoods, and there's a lot of people wanting to move out east because that's where the money is. That's where a lot of white people feel comfortable living, and they're going to keep building out east until there's nowhere else for them to go. And so that still leaves Black people on the west side who are still struggling. They can't sell the houses because the neighborhoods are terrible. They're filled with violence. They're filled with just bad things happening. And so I feel like people don't understand that segregation is still alive. It's just in a more modern form.
Now, let me just jump in and ask a question. We know Martin Luther King played a big part in the Montgomery bus boycott. How long did the boycott last? And for what you know, did a lot of the churches participate, or were some churches or were some black churches pull back? Because we heard that a lot. Not only did we hear in his writings, Martin Luther King said that a lot of black churches did not want to participate in the boycott. Back at you, McKenzie.
So the boycott lasted 382 days. A lot of people say 381, but it's actually 382 because 1956 was a leap year. So it's 382 days. And to your point, a lot of black churches did not want to participate. They were very hesitant because they were fearful of the retaliation if people had known that they were participating in the boycott. The only real ones that were really participant were Holt Street and Dexter. Everybody else was really, really kind of hesitant because they knew that if their employer had found out that they were participating, if they had found out that, or a friend found out and told somebody, that they would be fearful of losing their job. And their job at that time was their livelihood. I mean, there was nothing else. There weren't a lot of jobs going around, and, the cost of living, I mean, it's way less expensive than it is now, but for the amount of money people were making, I mean, they couldn't afford to lose their job. I mean, they had kids, they had people they were taking care of. More than likely, their mother or father that was elderly was staying with them. So they had a lot of responsibility as far as keeping the household together, and they did not want to risk their involvement in the bus boycott, even though, because I think there's another misconception that everybody that was black didn't ride the buses. If they said we didn't ride, nobody rode. And that's not true. It was about maybe 10 to 15% of black people that still rode the buses even during the boycott because they just could not afford to lose their job or lose their position at their employer. And so Martin Luther King, he really, because when he came in, he was 22, 23 at the time. So he was this young preacher just coming from Atlanta. And a lot of the elders were like, I don't know about him. He kind of seems like he's going to come in and run things. We do things a certain way. And, we weren't really sure if we could trust this guy. And E.D. Nixon was like, no, trust me, like, he's the guy that you want, and he's the guy that's going to make this happen. And eventually they did warm up to MLK as far as him not only being the preacher at Dexter, but also just being the face of this movement. And even after his house is bombed in January of 1956, he still had the courage to keep going. And that was him saying, God told him that he would see him through the movement. And that's exactly what he did.
Now I want to come back to you, but I do want to ask the other panelists, do you think, Minister Travis, do you think boycotts are effective? We look at what change would happen when we had marches and boycotts, but do you think that's an effective way for us to resolve things or bring attention to things in 2024, Minister Travis?
Yes and no. It has its place in our history, but it has not been the only way to be effective in our history. I think that we need to use our economical power. We have power economically that we need to use. We spend billions and billions of dollars in this country from hair care to shoes to clothes to everything. We support these institutions. So boycott is one step, but we also need to use our economical power to get what we want from this country, because we spend billions of dollars on things that you don't even realize how much money we spend on clothes and designer things and blah, 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 blah. We need to use that economical power to let them know who we are.
Okay, Dr. Johnson, do you think, based on what we know about our past and where we are now in 2024, that boycotting is an effective way for us to go to bring change?
Personally, I think that we're in a whole new different world from where we were 40 to 50 years ago, when Black people were more segregated off into community to themselves. They were willing to fight for issues that was more germane to them. Over the past 50 years, we've gotten a whole lot more freedom. We're making a whole lot more money. So you're not going to get a strong block of Black people to do anything for the most part politically other than, go to the polls and vote, and you don't get a lot of that. And so personally, I think we're going to have to try to start thinking more in terms of, our roles as real Bible believing Christians, and not the traditional white supremacy Christianity that we've been taught, that's cloaked in denominationalism, because I think that's a part of our biggest struggle right now, is that we've got all these major churches, call them Black churches in our communities, and you have basically no relationship with these pastors in that community. So we're so spread apart now. I don't think that method is going to work anymore. We need collaborative effort, but we also need to include good white people in on our campaign as well, because that's the way Christ.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, my feelings on the subject. I think boycotts, marches, protests are a way to get the world's attention. I looked at what happened with George Floyd. The world can speak through passive resistance and the gathering and the coming together, and we can get the attention of the world that way. And that's what happened with George Floyd and many other people that protest throughout the world. That's why we have the George Floyd bill that's still sitting on the desk of at the White House and not passed yet. And we need to get the bill passed. Now, economical resistance is still a boycott to me. It's still a boycott. If we don't even know who's sitting on the boards of the products that we buy, we don't even examine the cast of the boards to see if they have the same agreements that we, or the same value systems that we have. We don't even know if they support our Black institutions, our Black colleges. We don't know if they give to our Black organizations. We never examine that. We just buy. We just buy. We just buy. Just as Christians, we don't know if some people sitting on these boards are atheists and Satanisms. And we don't know, because as a people, we just buy. And I think we really need to know who's sitting at the top of these things that we support. Do we have anybody sitting on the boards of Pepsi Cola, on the boards of McDonald's? Do we have people that represent us sitting up there? And we don't care because we just buy. McKenzie, back at you. What do you think?
So I think boycotts are a good strategy point as far as getting people's attention. I think the way the young people are trying to boycott now when it comes to Israel and Palestine, they're not having any structure behind it. They're just kind of acting off impulse. They're angry, they're upset, and they have a right to, but they're getting the people's attention for 5 seconds and it's on to the next news story. I mean, people are walking out of graduations, people are doing things as far as, protesting on their college campuses, but it's not really keeping anybody's attention. It's not really a whole bunch of, CNN, MSNBC, they might do a news story about it, but it's not constant coverage of these young people are doing this, these young people are doing that. And so I think a lot of things one of the things I think people need to understand is that boycotting, there's a structure behind it. There's a way to do it as far as how it's going to be effective. Because after they saw in the Montgomery Bus Boycott that after a day that, okay, we think that this could work. And so they voted, hey, do we want to keep it a day or do we want to keep going? And the people of the community decided, we're going to keep going until there's actual change, paper in hand, change done. And so I think the young people today are just looking for that instant gratification and not thinking of the long-term effects of, okay, are you going to keep going because it's trendy, or are you going to keep going even when you're not trending, even when you're, getting only 10 and 15 views? Are you still going to keep, how passionate do you feel about this topic? And so I think that's something that people have to ask about themselves. Do they feel that do they have this passion for, as far as the topic that they're protesting about? I mean, George Floyd, it was all over the world. I mean, and they said we were going to keep, I mean, it was COVID, so people ain't had nothing else better to do. So we were like, we're going to keep protesting until something is done. And so, you know, people are now, it's just slowly dying off. They see that that's effective, but now people have no structure behind it. They're not going to their representatives in their state. They're not going to their representatives in their local communities. They're not going to their school board saying, hey, why are these libraries, why are you telling us that we can't read these type of books about our history? And so that's where they had to start. You can't, my mom always says, you can't eat the elephant in one bite. You have to start off small. Start with your local, you know, start getting voted, you know, voter registration. The more votes you have, the more power you have. You know, start doing the small things in the community and then work your way up into the White House, then the state legislators and whoever, because they're not going to take you seriously if you're just doing one little protest. They're like, you know, not that you need to go and burn somebody's house down or something, but you need to, you know, keep it going. Like I said, even if it's 10, 15 people that are liking your Facebook post and you're really passionate about something, you have the heart to keep it going, then keep it going, even when nobody's looking. The people in the boycott were not looking to get international attention. They just wanted to get the attention of the mayor. Was like, hey, we're gonna, since you said we deserve this treatment, well, you don't deserve to get paid. I mean, $3,000 a day in 1955 is almost $1 million today. I mean, that's how much money the bus company was losing. You got to hit their pockets. And so these young people, they're not understanding that it's not clicking to them. I think eventually it will, but with a little bit more help from the elders and that they sit there and observe and take in all that knowledge, I think they'll get where they're trying to get, where they're striving to get.
But I
Now,
can I
let me just answer this question. Just 1 minute, Dr. Johnson. Now, you're under Troy University. That's who supports the Rosa Parks Museum. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, so the funding that you receive is from Troy. It's not from the state or the local government.
No.
Okay, why is the money not, since this is a national museum and it's so important not only to Montgomery, but for the whole state of Alabama and to the whole world, why isn't there more funding coming there when we know that it takes more than just what you get from Troy University to support it, and you would not have any problems upgraded? Why do you think that has happened, that the congressman, the state representative, that no one is fighting to get more money to a historical Black museum as critical in our history as Rosa Parks? Back at you, McKenzie.
I think it goes back to their priorities. I mean, their priority is other things that do not involve the museum, as far as civil rights tourism. They feel like the Legacy Museum is one of those things where, you know, it's going to bring the most people. They've upgraded to almost 2 hotels. Well, the hotels will be done at the end of this year, and then 2 more restaurants. So, you know, I think personally they just don't see us as a priority. Now, when we get to the 70th is going to be next year. And of course, everybody's going to want to jump on a bandwagon of, oh, we want to donate. Oh, we want to do this. Oh, we want to do that. And we're actually in the early planning stages of that for next year now. Well, in the next couple of months. But I think it's because we haven't let them be a priority. We haven't gone to the Capitol, which is up the road from us, and said, hey, we need to talk to Governor such and such because we need more funding. This is what, if you truly feel this way about Black history and whatever, we want to get more funding. How do we get that? How do we get in touch with people? And if you're not going to give us the funding, then we're going to go out and get it on our own. I mean, that's how, you know, African Americans have made it this far. We haven't been handed anything. And so I think, you know, it's just, we haven't really tried to even rely on even our own university. You know, they might give us some support here and there, but as far as the events that we do, as far as the summer camp that we do, we fund that, you know, basically all on our own between donations and private donations from the state and local legislatures. Even with the Juneteenth Festival, J.C. Love, who's our probate judge, our mayor, is donating money for sponsorship for us. So it's not like Troy University is handing us $50,000. We have to go out there and tell our local legislation, the people that are talking to the governor on a daily or weekly basis, hey, you know, I'm giving money to these issues. And maybe they'll tell other people in their Congress. They'll tell other people in their circles, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I believe in. They need funding. They need help. And so, it's word of mouth. And then all of a sudden we're going to get contacted. So I think it's just really us not really pushing to have the government and the state government. I mean, they're not really involved as far as what we do, as far as being present, besides maybe a ribbon cutting down now and then. But other than that, that's not really, their priorities as far as right now.
Now, and before I let Dr. Johnson come in, I want to say something. Our Vice President, Kamala Harris, has been pushing for our Black institutions to be receiving more funding. And I think all our Black museums should be also receiving that funding. And before we go off the air, I'm going to have you make the announcement on how we can even send money to support. Private donors can support. Dr. Johnson, you had a question.
Well, it's not a question, it's basically a comment. The tragedy that we've experienced in some of our more modern catastrophe over this racial issues is we've had our own people who have not been integral when money started to come into our hands. I mean, when the situation happened here in 2015 with those 9 people getting murdered in the church in Charleston, 25 minutes away from where I'm sitting right now, you wouldn't believe what was going on in the news and in that church the months and years afterward. All that money and attention that was coming into that church. Do you not? There were multiple lawsuits in the church with the families and the church members. I mean, it was the most craziest thing you'd ever believe. And I'm saying it is a crying shame in the face of one of the worst racial history in the history of the country, and you've got us doing this kind of stupid stuff when people are putting all of this money into this project, and we have not been integral with it. And you can say the same thing about the Black Lives Matter. I've seen some of the footage, and if y'all can refute it, I'll back down from this. But they claim over $1 billion went into that movement, and that money was squandered in the location in the community where they claim they were doing something with it. So we have sabotaged our own interests because we don't have spiritual integrity. That's why we see so much of this foolishness coming out of these churches now on the internet, because we're not doing God's work. I'm sorry, but that's our biggest issue. Valerie, you're muted. You're muted, Valerie. Unmute your mic.
I say, preach, Dr. Johnson, preach. I see state representative. He might not can come in, but he's shaking his head in agreement with you. Preach, because guess what? Our integrity as Black people sometimes comes under scrutiny ourselves. We don't have the best intentions behind it. Yes, I agree, McKenzie. The boycott was organized. They had men of integrity. And let me just move aside. They had the church, they had preachers in front, and I'm not saying every pastor has that integrity, but the ones that was on that boycott, the ones that volunteered, they actually stayed there to the end. And I'm telling you the truth. I might have been one of the ones riding on the bus. I might have said, okay, bye. I got to get to work. I got to be at Miss Martha's house, and y'all not going to make me late. But guess what? They did it, and everybody benefited. So now we're here in 2024, and we've got to do something different. The church still got to be first. I know you're hearing me, House Representative. Dr. Johnson should be a part of that Black History Museum that you're putting together, because the church has always got to be present. Dr. Johnson's book should be in Rosa Parks, because the church always got to be present, because we got to know who we are first. See, it is God who brought us this far, and we want to just move it aside. The march was good, but God was in front of the march. The Kairos moment took place. And we was able to secure it. And I ain't preaching for Dr. Johnson. I'm just preaching the truth of the matter.
And it wasn't about our Blackness. We got Blackness tied into this. It's got to be about our spiritual foundation. That's what got us free. It was the spiritual side of us.
That's it. And let me say something else. It should be a museum for Till. Emmett Till should have a museum. His mother
expose him to the brutality of what people did to us. And I salute her today. I salute her today to have her son laid out so America could see the ugliness of what we did. Not we, but what was done unto him, an atrocity that was done to her son. So it's the exposure. It's brave people like yourself, McKenzie, young, that's going to lead the next generation. Period. Now let us know how we can help. Let's put it out there. How can you give your 5, your 10, your 100? We got a lot of Black millionaires, McKenzie. I just want to let you know. Oprah could give money. Jay-Z, do you want me to call him out? Could give money. You want me to call him out? Michael J. could give money. All these rich basketball players, football players, tennis. You know, I don't want to go that way with him because he didn't know what he was, but he could give money. Tiger Woods. He could give money. We can support our own self. We are the answer to our own problems, not white people. White people have stood beside us. It was many white freedom fighters that died. True. Period. So we've got to understand that. McKenzie, back at you. Tell us how we can support. Tell us, let me ask you a question. If I walked into the Rosa Parks Museum right now today, what's the first thing I would see, McKenzie?
So you will walk in and there's a bust of Rosa Parks, her sitting in what looks like the seat that she was sitting in when she was arrested. And so a lot of people like to take a picture with her sitting next to her as if they were sitting next to her at that time. And so people are like, oh my God, that's so cool, and things like that. And then you would go in, you would see our gift shop, which is full of books. It's full of neat souvenirs. A lot of the books that we sell aren't just about Rosa Parks. They're about Martin Luther King. They're about John Lewis. They're about Joanne Robinson, who was the president of the Women's Political Council, who basically got the flyers out to everybody. I mean, come on, 50,000 flyers in one night. I mean, that's crazy. In 1955, they had to work overtime to get that. I mean, you can get that in probably an hour somewhere now. But I mean, so we talk about those people. And
well, let me step in. It shows the unity of Black people. Right. It showed how unified. It showed them working together collectively for one thing. Period. In their mind. When we work together in unity, we can accomplish more together. Period. And we don't need no Judas with us, because there was Judas in the camp. But Martin Luther King, actually, he came against those Judas. It was a Judas that turned him in. I won't call the name, but yes. But when we work together collectively, we can make things happen. Rosa Parks is a part of our. We know she was not the first person that had this issue with the bus. We know that. But we know that her movement actually propelled us to another level in our understanding and in riding the bus. Back at you, McKenzie. Let us know how we can help, what we can do, how we can support. Back at you.
So you can go to our website. It's www.troy.edu/Rosa Parks. And you can go to our website and see basically what we do all year, information about our museum, information about Rosa Parks. And we have a support tab on that website to where you can make a donation, whether it's $5, $10, $100, $100,000 if you wanted to. Any little bit helps. And so, that's it right there. So if you all wanted to go to that website and just see what we're doing, we're definitely excited about the rest of the year and going into the next year. We are working on virtual reality with her. We're launching this big app. It'll be launching in August or September, as far as having Rosa Parks right next to you and telling her a little bit about her life as if she was there. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And I think it's really going to change the way that museums are ran, because it's one thing to read information, but it's another thing to actually visualize it and see Rosa Parks, because a lot of the kids that come through our museum, they were, not even born when she was, when she passed. So it's a great tool to have as far as this VR and AR. So we're definitely really, really excited about that, as well as our Journal Go app that basically gives a little bit more information about the museum, a little bit more information about what we do and what we do outside of the museum. We do a lot of events throughout the year. Like I said, our Juneteenth festival, we celebrate Rosa Parks Day, we celebrate her birthday. So I'm really excited.
Excuse me, when is Rosa Parks Day? When is
Rosa
her
Parks
day?
Day is on December 1st, 1950. Well, December 1st of every year to commemorate the day she was arrested. So us and her family are working to get that as a national holiday. It's definitely been a long process. We're still working on that, but that's one of the things that we're trying to get to the White House. So that's definitely a work in progress, but we're making good progress, I could say.
Now, let me say something. Rosa Parks, she was married. I think her husband's name was David. Was that her name? What?
Raymond Parks.
Okay, now we never mentioned him, but he played a strategic part of the movement as well because he was right by her side.
Every step of the way, even when she was, very apprehensive. And it was one night that she talks about in, I believe, Quiet Storm, where James Blake, the guy that was driving the bus the day she was arrested, she had an encounter with him about 12 years earlier than the actual day of her arrest. She got on the bus and she paid. And a lot of people don't understand that when you paid at the front of the bus, but you had to get off the bus and go through the back of the bus if you were Black. And so a lot of times James Blake, he would lead people. He wouldn't even go to their bus stops. He would just ride by. And so he was very notorious of treating Black people very unfairly. And so she paid at the front. And as she was trying to go to the back, he drove off. And he got her purse stuck in the door. And so he kind of dragged her a little bit, probably about maybe 100, 150 feet before her purse eventually let go. It was raining outside and Raymond was very upset. And he was like, I don't know if, because she had just joined the NAACP. She had done a little bit of community work. And he was like, I don't know if you're really prepared for this. And she was like, no, I'm going to keep doing this. Like I'm gonna, and she swore to never get on a bus that he was driving again. And so she was so tired that night. That's why the rumors of her being planted are false, because had she known, if she wasn't so tired, she would have got on the bus. She would have just waited for another bus. So Raymond, he worked at the military base, and he also lost his job as well when they found out about his involvement and his wife's involvement in the Rosa Parks Museum. Not the Rosa Parks Museum, sorry, the Montgomery Bus Boycott. So he also lost his job as well as hers, but he played a very pivotal part. He was there every step of the way for her and never lost hope. And he knew the power and courage that she had before she even knew it. So
now, did she have any children?
She did not have any children. Her brother, Sylvester, had 12 kids. So she had plenty of nieces and nephews for the children that she did not have. It's not that she didn't want children. She just wasn't really, by the time she kind of met Raymond and realized the work that she wanted to do, she wasn't really trying to really be a mother. She really wanted to focus on her work. And like I said, she had a lot of nieces and nephews. So it wasn't really a big priority for them to start their own family. But she loved children. That's why we have a children's wing addition to our museum that was added in 2006 for that purpose.
Now, last question. Why do you think it's critical that our children know who she is?
So it's very critical because, like I said, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And one of the things that we drive home at the museum is that she wasn't a superhero. She was just an ordinary woman that was just tired of giving in. She was just tired of being tired. And so we try to tell children that you don't have to have these accolades. You don't have to have 10 degrees and all these things that society is telling you to have. If you want to make the change, all you have to do is go around to your local neighborhood. Even if you want to try to get a cleanup done in your neighborhood, go around and start a petition. All you need is a couple of 100 signatures, and you got a movement started. Or even if you're tired of the violence, if you want to try to make change in your schools, if you want to try to make change in your community centers, or if you want to try to make change in your own state, you start and you start connecting with people that are in those positions, like your city council, your school board, the people that your parents might work for. They might have some insight of how to help you. And so that's what the message that I want to leave with people is that she was not an ordinary citizen. She was an ordinary citizen, but she did an extraordinary work. So.
Okay, how has this impacted your life? Being a young Black African-American woman yourself, how has working in the Rosa Parks Museum impact your life and the way you think?
So, because I grew up in Alabama, one of the things that we're kind of taught is that, the very baseline of civil rights. We're taught, Rosa Parks, she didn't get up out of her seat, and this Montgomery Bus Boycott and ended segregation, and that's about it. But to see people that look like me work in a museum about Rosa Parks, it makes me happy because these are the type of people that should be working at the museum, people that look like us, people that have the passion that I have as far as Black history to keep it going. And, like I said, our 70th anniversary is coming up next year. I'm hoping that there's going to be another 70 years of this museum and another 70 after that. So for me, it's just really impacted my life for the people that I've met, the people that have come through the museum, the people that are really important. We're hoping to have, whoever's president. Well, not whoever's president, but if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris get another term, we're hoping to have them next year for our 25th down here. So really just making those connections and really trying to better the museum every single day.
Okay, Minister Trevor, who comes from the motherland of Africa, she don't wear anything but African garments. What are your comments, Minister Trevor, as we begin to close the show? What do you feel about what you've heard and the importance of keeping our legacy alive, Minister Trevor?
Well, I was gonna say, before you do that, I have to run. I have another meeting that I have to get to, but I really appreciate this opportunity. It was nice to meet all of you. Nice to meet all of you online who are on live. And like I said, www.troyuniversity.edu and Rosa Parks tab, and under support, we would love to have your support. My email as well as my director's email is on there. If you all loved it, hated it, wanted more information, just reach out to me and I'd be glad to connect with you all.
No, we loved it. I'll call you later. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. Okay. What do you feel about it, Mr. Trevor, about what you've heard?
As an educator, principal, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, I have seen all facets of education. And I always felt as being writing curriculum and reading curriculum over the years, I have always felt that curriculum had not been infused in the way that it was supposed to. Every school system here in New York City, I don't know about other parts of the country, we only talk about Black history for 30 days. And sometimes it's not even 30 days. And they do a little report and it's never dived into Martin Luther King, Malcolm, and the people that you know. Very few times are we delved into the real issues about Black history, because you know why? It was not politically correct. You know why? We would get the union upset telling us we're a Black school and we're being, what's the problem? We had so much feedback, so much pushback on the things that we were supposed to do. We have to have these museums. It is not incorporated in the educational structure the way it's supposed to be. It's not only supposed to be 30 days, the 30 days, it's supposed to be infused in the curriculum. I read curriculum. It is not infused in the curriculum the way it should be. A lot of things.
But I got to say something, Minister Trevor, let me come in. The schools are not the people that's supposed to be doing it. It's supposed to be the church. The church, and Dr. Johnson is going to say so. The church must play a part in the understanding of who we are. It's not the school. School can't do it alone.
No, but let me say, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying, the disturbing part to me, when you're asking me the question, the disturbing part to me is our children that are in the urban areas are not aware of this. That if you go into a Jewish community, their history is taught in their system. And why? Because the church is a part of the school system. The church has
synagogue
himself in the synagogue. I'm sorry. The synagogue has infused himself in the school system. We have not done that. That's my point that I'm trying to make. It's a different type of learning in the Jewish community, and it's a different type of learning, especially in the urban community, which is completely wiped out of our history, of the church. The culture is completely wiped out. And it's a big difference.
Now let me say something. teachers played a big part in the civil rights movement and
Yes.
the influence of on the students. But I don't see that happening today. Why?
Absolutely, because that era of those people, you got to understand, are retired. They might have passed on. You understand? So that zeal and that understanding and that fire is not there. You have that young person that came on because she has a fire. You come in now and you see these teachers, their mindset, I can't explain to you, is totally different. Their mindset is, they don't, why? Because when they went to college, they didn't know anything about Black history.
But black teachers must care about all kids, period. And the schools were segregated.
But if you live in an urban community and you see that the children do not have any hope, any pride in who they are, if you see that, I see that. If you see that they don't have any hope and pride in who they are, and the teachers are not, because it's just a job.
Okay, that's the critical thing. Teachers, your jobs. Teachers, who all teachers that's listening, that's going to hear this program, your job is more than just a job.
Yes.
Your job is to care, just not for Black kids, but all children, period. So it cannot be just a job.
No,
that's the point.
What is going on now with our children, with these teachers and administrators, is just a job. They're trying to hit the point, the benchmark of the Common Core. They're trying to hit the benchmark of the social studies. They're trying to hit the benchmark, and what they're doing is teaching out of the curriculum, but they're not teaching out of the love of the subject. That they will let the children open up their mind and delve into, what is this? What is this?
Okay, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to bring you up. Why is our history such a problem to white folks? Dr. Johnson.
Because white people know that they're living a lie. They have stolen our legacy and made it out to be theirs. And now that some of us are really, really coming back into this knowledge, they are trying to rewrite history. In fact, I'm scheduled to meet with a guy in about 30 minutes. He came here last week. This is a white guy, very accomplished dentist. He has dentists, 10 or 12 different locations of dentist schools around. And he's one of those white guys that are trying to deny the history of America. I was telling him, he has this book. He said he read it. He didn't read the book because I told him that America was not a Christian nation based on the Constitution. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, God, Jesus, nor Christ is mentioned one time in your Constitution. That's not a spiritual document. And he said, well, slavery wasn't a part of America founders. I said the 3/5 clause in the Constitution and the Fugitive Slave Act is in the. He didn't know none of this stuff, and everything he was coming up with, he's talking this modern day stuff like Rick. What's the guy named down in Florida? The governor, Rick. He's talking
the governor.
Governor. He's talking this modern revisionist history stuff. These Trump followers, they're ignorant of history and they're mad because they're seeing the gains that Black people have made over the last 50 years. And they're doing everything the thing that they can to try to crush this information. But again, this happened because of God, and they're not going to be able to stop it. But our biggest problem as Black people today is our spirituality. We have got to get spirituality back. We don't have that root that we had 50 years ago. This generation today, this is a cookie and candy spoiled generation. That's why they go and burn down stuff. They don't care. We got a different generation, and until we get this moral compass back, I'm afraid to think of where we're going.
This is war cry. You heard it first here on War Cry. It's not politically correct, but it's Christ directed. So this is War Cry. Join us next week for another exciting show if you want the real deal. Now, if you don't want the real deal, then continue with the fake news, as one of our ex-presidents said, and that's all you're going to get. It's fake news. War Cry, we're praying for you. We want you to pray for the kids. We want you to pray for the government. And guess what? Jesus is still king. This is War Cry. Love you guys. Love you. Love you. Love you. Love you.
This is war cry. We're on the wall crying out for our children, our communities, our schools, our churches, our families. This is war cry. Welcome to our reality. Gun violence. Chicago, Philly, Detroit, New York, Atlanta, just to name a few. Our black children are dying day by day. This is war cry. Police brutality. Hands up! Don't move. I can't breathe. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag All Lives Matter to Christ. This is war cry. Drugs, rape, mass shootings, school violence. This is war cry. Galvanizing people to pray for our children and to take action. Let's march on Washington. We want prayer back in school. This is war cry. Candles, memorials in every corner in our neighborhood. Who died this weekend? Oh no, not Miss Martha's grandson. This is war cry. He was only 16. His brother died last year. He was only 13. This is war cry. We the people. We're the elected officials. This is war cry. We need the church. Where's the church? Only on Sundays. Get to the streets, church. We need you out there. This is war cry. Girl, be gone. Boy, be gone. Mothers crying. Fathers being locked up. Welcome to our reality. Identity crisis. This is war cry. Oh, they're trying to remove our history off the textbook. Oh, critical race theory? It makes them feel bad. It's our reality. Fake reality shows. We want the real truth. Stay woke. This is war cry. HBCUs under attack. This is war cry. Equal pay for what we do. We want a reparation. This is war cry. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Wait a minute. Is that somebody else they're burying that looks like us? Only 12. This is war cry. Oh, let us come together and pray for our young people, pray for our communities, pray for our schools, pray for our churches, pray that the government gives us what we need, a fair opportunity. This is war cry, home of the brave, land of the free. Who's free? Our men are locked up. This is war cry. Hashtag mothers against gang violence. Hashtag fathers who love their sons. Hashtag what would Jesus do? This is war cry.
I know who goes before me.